Okay, well, I'm going to start. It's 10 o'clock and I think we're just about ready. And so welcome to Eco Park Environmental Centre, Birmingham Black Country Wildlife Trust. It's always great to visit Wildlife Trust locations, and particularly locations that are, well, different actually. And I haven't been around this yet, but it looks very different to me and it looks very interesting, particularly where it is. So I'm glad we all managed to get here. Okay, what I would like, please, is if people in the room could just introduce themselves. And I'm not sure who's on screen, but I think it just helps if we know each other. So I'm going to start with myself and then go round to my left, and we'll go around the table. We're going to be finished with probably with Chris. So I'm Councillor Ian Courts. I'm a Solihull Council, leader of the Solihull Council, and I chair the Environment Committee for the CA and have what's called a cabinet responsibility here. So that's me. Move round to the left.
George Sims, Smart Hub Lead, the Energy Team at the Combined Authority.
I'm Kate Ashworth, I'm Energy Infrastructure Lead at Energy Capital.
I'm Councillor Rob Clinton from Dudley. I'm the Cabinet Member for Waste Management and Climate Change.
I'm Matthew Rhodes, I'm Chair of Energy Capital and I also chair the Industrial Energy Task Force, which I'd like to come to talk about.
Hi, I'm Rick Burgess. I'm the Key Greenland Officer at the Environment Team at the NCA.
I'm Ron Vittrice, I'm Programme Manager in the Environment Team at the CA.
Hi, I'm Beth Haskins. I've recently joined the Environment Team as a graduate in the graduate programme at the Midlands.
Hi, I'm Katie Jackson. I'm the Environment Behaviour Change Officer in the Environment Team at the Combined Authority.
Hi, I'm Matthew Griffin. I'm the Graduate Environment Project Officer in the Environment Team at the Combined Authority.
Hi, I'm Liz Hopkins. I'm Environmental Manager for West Midlands Fire Service, and I've just joined on week 3.
I'm Darryl Darkin. I am the Department Lead for Sustainability and Innovation at West Midlands Fire Service and part of the National Fire Chief Council Sustainability Task and Initiative.
Good morning, all. Thank you for coming. I'm Julia Garrett, Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust for Birmingham and
I'm Gareth Morgan, the Head of Education and Engagement for Wildlife Trust for Birmingham.
Hi, I'm Simon Atkinson, Head of Conservation, Wildlife Trust for Birmingham.
I'm Councillor Andy Magovich, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Housing and Solihull Council.
I'm Craig Evans, Government Services Officer from the WMCA, and I'll be with some.
Okay. I'm Chris Green. I'm Blowing from Friends of the Earth West Midlands. We'd like to know a little bit more about what's going to happen about the council bringing together meeting that didn't happen because of Her Majesty's passing, and also I'm going to apologise on that leak quite soon. I'm going to go quite early.
Okay, and on the screen, I'm not sure it's going to be practical. I can't see who's there. So is someone able to just, I can't see it actually. Is someone able to just say who's on the screen?
Yeah.
Hi, at Councillor Court, it's Suzanne Ward from the Environment Agency.
And it's Jackie Homan here. I'm Head of Environment from the Combined Authority. Mike?
Good morning, Mike Webb, Natural Capital Programme Manager from the Combined Authority.
Okay, I think that's it. And well, okay, thank you very much for attending. You've all should have the agenda and papers, and we will proceed through it. I mean, I said earlier about being in different places. What I've tried to do with these meetings is to go to different places and have a combined virtual and physical meeting. Really just to make it a bit more interesting for everyone attending and more engaging. I personally don't think you can ever make decisions on anything without going, you know, look at projects unless you know where they are and seeing them on the ground. So welcome to you all. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Kerry Murphy from Walsall and Councillor Jim.
Okay. Any substitutes? No. Okay. And any declarations of interest. I can't imagine any of those. Okay, chairs and marks. Well, I mean, I've already made a few. I want to just check the minutes of the last meeting. It seems an awful long time ago, 9th of March. Is everybody okay with those? And if they are, then I'll move on. Now, matters arising, I don't think we've got any as such. Chris made a question a minute or so ago. I can't answer it. He said he's got to go early, so I think it's him. I'm just treating it under matters arising. Can anyone help me or Chris with an answer to that question? Yes.
Yes, so the meeting's rearranged for Monday, the 21st November. It's still in Coventry in the same location. So I've got the Eventbrite link this morning, so I'll share it with everybody. So yeah, it's going to be the 21st November in Coventry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Good stuff. Thank you. Right. Well, unless anyone else has a matter arising, then we're going to get into the substantive first matter, which is community green grant update. And I'm not sure who's that'll be Ruth. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to present your report, just talk about it. I mean, it's interesting where we are. It sort of brings home to me this whole concept of green grants, because I mean, one of the things I mean, I don't actually know this particular part of Birmingham. I admit I did get a bit lost. But the trees, you know, and the green stuff around, to me, sort of brings home this whole issue of green spaces, connecting them up and their value to local people. So I think it's a good place to be here in the context of that. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So Jackie, you're going to show a presentation because I haven't got the Zoom with today. I'll talk from here. That's all right.
I'm sharing it. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes, it's there.
Can see it. Just tell me when you want me to move the slides on.
Thanks, Jackie. So I don't want to bore you all with lots of details about the green grants, because where you might already know what it is, but just in case you don't, I will give a little bit of brief background. So the Community Green Grants came out of a piece of work that the CA did with the New Economic Foundation, especially after COVID, about the negative impact of the lack of green space has on communities. So they wanted to come up with a grant that community groups and organisations can apply for to increase access to green space, but also to increase biodiversity of areas as well. So not talking about walking in parks, cycling parks, we're talking about environmental projects that people can get involved with, to get some kind of hands-on with nature. So the aim of the grant is to increase or improve green spaces close to where people live. So the idea is that people could walk to something and get involved in something in their own community. Connect people to nature, especially in areas of deprivation and of green deprivation, so where people don't live near good green space. To enhance the local environment, to tackle barriers to access to green space, because we know just because there's a park somewhere, it doesn't mean that people go to it, because some people just might not think that's something that's for them, or is easy to access, or it might not be safe. So it's kind of raising awareness of what you can do. So the CA did a consultation back in summer 2021 with a number of different environmental organisations, community groups, and kind of came up with an idea around this green grants. And we launched it in January of this year. So if we go to the next slide, Jackie. So we have two different scales of grants. So we have a small grant and a large grant. The small grant is 3,000 to 25,000, the large grant is 25,000 up to 100. The main thrust of this programme is the small grant. So we aim to give around 20 out over the life of the fund, which at the moment is around 2 years. So those small grants are aimed at community groups, CIC, small charities that can work alongside people and are embedded in communities and understand what people want and how people get involved. We have a limited amount of money set aside for large grants. And at the moment, we're aiming to give around 2 of those away over the life of the fund, although it might be more because we don't know how much people will apply for. For the large grants, we expect quite big or ambitious plans. So thinking about wildlife corridors, about creation of habitats, improvement of habitats. And it's quite an exciting opportunity for a group that has a really creative and ambitious idea. So I'll just tell you about how the grants are so far. If I want to go into the next slide, Jackie. So we've actually had 3 rounds, although our 3rd panel was meeting on Monday. So we can't really say who's funded yet, because often the panel have follow-up questions for organisations. But I have included, oh no, those figures aren't in there. Oh, the 43 figures aren't in there. So these are the applications that are received, approved, and the ones that are in progress. But it's missing 43 in the middle. So we have funded our first project in Wolverhampton. So it should have a 1 in Wolverhampton there, and then 2 more for Birmingham. So that's what it's looking so far. The panel meet each quarter to make decisions about the fund. So we've had 3 rounds so far. Hopefully we'll be able to announce those quarter 3 applications soon. There should be a press release. If you want to go into the next slide, Jackie. So I spend a lot of my time doing kind of support and promotion for the Green Grant. So my role is to really support people around making applications. People really struggle with making applications for grants, especially small organisations, small charities and CICs. So they need quite a lot of support. So it's a rolling grant. We work closely with Heart and Community Foundation, and they have an application portal on their site, and people can go to that portal and apply at any time. We have in-depth support documents on that website to help them as well. Over time, we've kind of refined the process, and we have quite a lot of support documents available to people to help them apply. People can meet with myself. If they're applying for a large grant, they can meet with myself and Mike, and we can give them advice around what we're looking for and support them. We get a lot of inquiries about the fund. Promotion is mainly through the CA comms, through local authorities, and through the voluntary sector networks like One Walsall, and the equivalent in Dudley and the other areas. So above there is a record of kind of significant inquiries and meetings we've had from each area around the fund from around September last year to August this year. So yeah, interest is high, but it doesn't always necessarily turn into applications. People need quite a lot of support for applications in, and it's been quite slow in some areas, but we do have interest coming through. We have about a database of 200 organisations and individuals who are, on our regular newsletters and updates who are interested in the fund. I'm going to the next slide, Jackie. So we found that people need quite a lot of support around the ideas around increasing biodiversity. That's not something that the bigger charities would struggle with, the environmental charities, but the smaller community groups, they do struggle with it a bit because it's a requirement of the fund. They have to do something that is around, increasing nature, putting wildflower meadows, putting in ponds, that kind of thing. And they do find that quite difficult. They often will come to us with just an idea around gardening. So we've been delivering these biodiversity webinars once a month to support potential applicants. We've done it on a number of different topics. We've done ones with the RSPB, we've done ones on how to make a pond. We find this is a useful resource for people, and we have them on our YouTube channel so people can look them up. And we have seen a bit of an increase over time in things like people wanting to put in wildlife ponds, people understanding about kind of habitat boxes and what's good for pollinators. But we have to kind of keep pushing that, otherwise people will just apply and say, we want to do some gardening. And our panel are quite strict and have quite expectations. They want to be proper kind of, nature recovery plans within those. I'm going to go into the next one, Jackie. So it's a kind of long-term investment, the Green Grant, and it takes a while for the differences to be seen, as you can imagine, because it's seasonal. People applying for funds, and it's probably not until 6 months later you'll see the result of the project. But some of our quarter 1 projects are starting to come through, and if you can see this here, this is King's Rise Academy, and they wanted to create a community garden for the pupils, but also for the community as well, because they wouldn't fund something that was just for school use. It had to be for the community as well. And this is their space it was before. We're not the only funder in this project, but we funded the wildflower meadow and a lot of the activities. And I've got a little video that I really hope is going to work to play, where you can see the difference in the transformation of the site. If you want to go into the video, Jackie, and I hope it plays. You click again. There's no sound, is there? Anybody technical can help me with that?
Yeah, just asked her to unmute. Jackie, can you
Want
tell?
me to play it again?
Yeah, just try if that
It's
works.
kind of slow as well, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe I.
Here at King's Rise Academy. We're here to officially open the Kraken and Wellbeing Garden. Kraken stands for King's Rise Academy, Knowledge and Education in Nature. It's been developed to provide our pupils and the community with a space to come to enjoy, to find out about the great outdoors, to learn more about nature itself, and to enjoy getting green fingers. Community here at school and beyond shared with us that there wasn't really anywhere they could do so, provide them with a space to do that. So,
Okay.
I'm Louise.
Yeah.
It's a lovely video. You can see the beautiful wildflowers.
Got the idea.
So I won't go through all the details of these, but these are kind of just like a little brief summary of the 6 projects that we funded. The little girl watering down there, that's the transformation of that school site. So it does have a beautiful wildflower. So I'm going to the next slide, Jackie. These are all in the notes, a kind of a longer description of this project. But we've got so far 2 in Walsall, 1 in Coventry, and 2 in Birmingham. And then there's 43, we just funded another one in Wolverhampton and 2 in Birmingham. And then I think, Jackie, if you just want to go into the next step. So we are only funded at the moment till the end of next year. So we need to look at additional funding for this programme if we want to carry it on. At the moment, we're in conversations with Heritage Lottery about putting an expression of interest for that fund. We won't be able to just kind of carry on as normal. It will have to be something different because they won't fund us to continue this project. So looking at kind of what's coming in, what are the possible trends and how could the fund develop and possible ideas around kind of climate adaptation, helping organisations and community projects with that. I don't know whether Mike wants to add anything to those next steps.
No, I think you've covered it off really well there, Ruth. So yeah, thank you. But happy to answer any questions if anyone's got them on that part.
Okay, back to me. 2 or 3 points before I just open it up. I mean, I was going to, the issue of increasing biodiversity, I noticed it wasn't in G at the top of page 10 about enhanced environment. And I was going to ask how, you know, how much that is factored in, but you did say it's a requirement, yeah. which to me is extremely important. It can be quite simple, some of the measures that that are taking. I think I'd just like to know in terms of the maintenance of projects. I mean, it's quite easy to create, you know, a wildlife type project. It's quite easy for them to fall into disrepair and disappear, particularly with the problems obviously we had over the summer of heat, and I suspect that will only continue. I sort of strongly support the idea of helping communities make, helping them with the personal touch is really important. Not everybody is geared up to deal with these things. I know I did a lottery grant myself a few years ago, and it was, you know, mind-numbing to go through the detail then and some of the data that's needed. And I wondered actually whether we have, you could say, well, you could have looked this up, but do we have, or does the CA have what I'd call a resource centre or a website that people can get into to see what the, you know, how to do some of these things and examples? Because I mean, clearly, if you are, you know, the fund, every source of funding usually runs out at some point. If you're going to sort of pitch in bids, so I hope you all will, but for further help on this, it's very helpful to have demonstrators, examples, and other things that we can show off. And I mean, interested in your remarks about schools. I mean, one of the things I always note about schools and my own grandchildren is how interested they all are in biodiversity, but how as people get a bit older, sometimes that interest wanes a little bit. And I just think the value of involving young people and parents actually is enormous. So I just want to comment on that, and I'll take any more.
When you say about a website, do you mean a resource to help people?
Yeah, I want
future
to do a green, I want to apply for a green card, so, you know, is there somewhere where I can see examples of what people have done?
Oh,
Looks
right.
feasible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we make sure the kind of press releases about the project go on the Heart of England Community Foundation website, which is where our application portal is. So people can see what's happened already, and we have them on our website as well.
Yeah, they're on our website, and you've got more recently doing resource sessions with webinars.
Yeah, so we do these monthly webinars to advise people around easy ways to increase biodiversity. We have kind of business speakers come on and leave kind of share.
It purely, you know, it's access, you know, something very often things are there, but getting to them and finding them is, you know, it's just about signposting on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether the CA, there is a, you know, a simple statement like, you know, increasing access to green grant scheme, increase biodiversity, or anything that could link us through to what we've done.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything like that. That's what I'm saying. Okay. As a thought. Any other speakers or yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm Councillor Maggie with Capital Council. There does appear to be a really good uptake in Birmingham in terms of the projects, large number of inquiries and projects that have been reviewed. There's only, you know, given the number that have been processed, only been 3, but I think you mentioned another 2 in quarter 3, which is good. The committed spend, I've noted overall is about 15% of the budget so far.
Yeah.
It would be useful to know the total value of the applications that are in process. And in terms of whether we need to do more work and try to get more people to apply until that money is taken. Also, just given the fact that we're in planting season now, so if people have got a project where they want to plant trees, it does need to be a quick turnaround going forward. And also just want to know how many applications are from the high social population area, which targeted, and also those from where there's a high black Asian one. You know, just find it is really supportive of the continuation of this scheme. And you mentioned that people in application about 3 papers. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, I should have said that. We don't have a massive amount of money to give away. So that's why we don't fund a lot of projects. The competition is quite high. And because it's a rolling grant, we commit to giving away so much each quarter, which is roughly about 65,000 per quarter. And then with the 200,000 set aside for the large grants. All that is flexible depending on what's coming in, but that's the kind of like rough idea in our head. So we don't have a lot of money to give away, which is why we don't fund loads. So the competition is quite high.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's interesting, we're both here, but 2 councils that are singled out as not having, and it's Solihull and Dudley. I know we do an awful lot anyway. I'm sure we'll
And they're coming through. We do have work in progress. It seems that it does take me through a long time for applications.
It's a process of the audit. Okay. All right. Any other Andy?
Yeah, well, just first comment. One is question. There's 3 comments. One is a question. What biodiversity calculator do you use? Are you in sync with the government's DEFRA's calculator for biodiversity? Second one, just a comment on, we did a project very much akin to this at Kingshurst Brook in Solihull, up in Chelmsford Wood, where we took a culverted river and we just took the concrete banks away, and we created a meandering stream with totally new plants in, new biodiversity, and it's where it was just a piece of land. And suddenly you had people picnicking. You were there and you saw the people picnicking there. So there is real potential this project transform an area for very sort of reasonable cost. But my other point is, how do we? The application process is daunting. Is it a role that we need local authorities just to help and find community groups and help them through that hump of how do I start filling up an application form?
Yeah, I mean, that's always I find the functional sector councils are very useful. The kind of FCBO and those kind of things. But yeah, as much support as possible to people. But I would go out and visit groups. If people inquire about grants, I would go over to their site and talk to them about it. That's what. The problem for me is people doing that first. People will often just put in a cold application without the support is there.
Yeah, I think the challenge is with all the emails, all the information, all the websites for someone to actually
finding and say, oh, we can do something.
Yeah.
And your final question, sorry, is what is the smallest piece of land that's viable for you to put it around?
Well, I mean, it's not about what they would do with it, I think. I think we'd be open to kind of any suggestion if it was.
So like room size, maybe like this?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what they want to do with it, I think.
Yeah.
We'd be open to the idea. In terms of the biodiversity, we have this map that shows if you live within 300 metres of green space, and we use the Natural England doorstep standard as well, see if people live near the green space. But they have to kind of commit an application to what they would do to improve the biodiversity. Describe it, what they would add. Then we have ecologists on our panel like Mike, and also then from the Wolverhampton University who kind of look at that.
It's really good going forward to use the standard biodiversity calendar. We all do it in planning, so therefore we can harmonise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just interested in the request was made about the disadvantaged areas. And
Yes,
things
I'll
like
have
that.
to look into that.
I think there's something here we just want to reflect on, because what our own experience is that more prosperous areas tend to have more mature community groups that do things. And for instance, the Kingshurst brook that you've referred to, which is on the edge of Birmingham, I know we collaborate on the brook because it goes through the two boroughs. That was something we set up and actually pushed it, I think, in that case. The community love it, but I just think there's something there to, mobilising local communities to take interest. It's not an easy thing.
No.
And the money will go to the areas which are most highly
Well,
developed.
we prioritise 10 to 20% into the conservation on
Okay.
our application process. If you're in those areas, you're going to get more marks. That's what we're doing.
Okay. Right.
Yep, I mean, council have moved, reflected on the amount of applications that we do, but at least Birmingham's had some successful applications. But Dublin, Solihull, I'm getting the applications now through. Sandbourne have had no successful applications.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's obviously some work to be done there.
Yeah.
I mean, of all these 7 authorities, I would imagine that some are probably more deprived in terms of green space than any of the others.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
there are ones coming.
Greenbelt, aren't there?
Yeah, there's one coming through for Sandwell. We're working with Sandwell Council being really supportive and with the team.
Yeah.
I met with Matthew Huggins.
Matthew.
Yeah, and he, really wants to make sure.
Yeah.
So it's just giving people to put them in and supporting them to navigate through that process.
But it is about support, right, and there's less staff out there trying to give support. It's about voluntary organisation groups like the SCDO and so on that need to be pushed to do that. So I'll make sure that.
I mean, we've done some meet the funders with them, but we're always wanting to do more. So, we come and speak at anything.
Yeah. In relation to the bigger items, I mean, what's happening with those? Can we give any indication as to whether there are any applications in process?
For the large one, yeah, we've got one in process at the moment.
One. Okay.
It hasn't gone into the panel yet. So.
Sorry, is it Sandwell haven't had any? Doesn't it say here that
they've applied, they've not been funded?
There's been no successful applications. In other words, some of the applications that have been submitted have not been successful.
Yeah.
I think we're now working closer to the people of the whole process.
Yeah.
The table on top of page 12, I didn't jump out at me. I thought that was an application. I mean, it says applications received and through on the previous page. Q3 approval will not be confirmed till the end of September.
Yeah, they met on Monday. So we've got one more country for Wolverhampton.
Okay. Right. I didn't realise that none of them approved from the none have been successful. Okay. All right, anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just add another comment. 3 years back, when I used to chair schools meeting with funds from that performance and third sector. So we did a whole review into working with third sector, and the report was presented to the council then. One of the recommendations then was for the council to hire professional bid writers. as city council officers. I think as a wider West Midlands wide, I've heard that's something, perhaps not from this board, but wider West Midlands. I think that would be brilliant. There's so many below the radar organisations, be husband, wife, group, a couple of people on the road, and they just want to do something, and they haven't got the skills. Unlike the larger organisations, you kind of put in the application, they tend to get bored with the same contracts over and over again. And in terms of like the chair mentioned about maintenance of these projects, large organisations know about that because they know they need to have a maintenance as well. So I do think something that needs to do, and perhaps you can take this chair with your colleagues who chair the other organisations within the West Midlands Combined Authority, see if you can have professional bid writers who will help the likes of people, organisations and what.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but it's costly for a bid writer. Is there any way we can simplify the process so we can actually cut through the bureaucracy and just get to the hub of what the issue is?
I mean, I'm here to offer all that support. If people send me a draft, I will put notes on it, I will send it back. For me, getting people to do that in the first place, that's a massive challenge for me, because people often feel self-conscious, they don't want to talk about their ideas. It's getting people to understand that they need to approach me first. I'll then meet with them, I'll sit down and look at it. So that kind of support is there through me and through other organisations. But it's getting that message out there, I find it.
We send a message to whoever's granting the grants. Make it simple.
I mean, it's on the, we have a step-by-step guide to filling out the application. It's all on there. Get in contact. We have a step-by-step guide to building biodiversity. Sometimes people just do it last minute and then they put it in.
I think what we need to be sort of clear on this is that the CA, and we're talking to the CA meeting, is a facilitator who's giving grants. And it sounds as though we're doing what we can to help people. What we need to do is get that the message out. This is going to be a collaboration with local authorities as well to push this, and you probably know the local people better. So there's a limit to what the CA can, and sometimes decides doing too much. What I would suggest is when the minutes of this meeting is crafted, we actually highlight the issue of getting getting these messages across so that it can be spread from the top down for a start. And just as if possible, I will highlight it anyway, because it's such a useful thing. We do want it, we want it pushing out. So that's how I suggest we try and do this. And through officers groups, just make the point. Some people have missed out. Some people, not getting the help that perhaps not the help and not understanding what to do. And we want to do what we can to help that because we want to make it successful. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. That's really good. And we're going to move on to now to net zero neighbourhood. It's down to George. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're right next to me. There's quite a few people come in, and I'm really pleased about that. So, no, I've got eyes in the back of my head. Great. I can't see you. I mean, you want to move around or you? Please, Mr. George.
Thank you. Jackie, would you mind skipping on a couple of slides, please? I did put this at purpose there. I think it's useful to have the context. So if you wouldn't mind moving on one more, come back to that. So hopefully you'll have a chance to look at the paper. Sorry, back one. Back one, please, Jackie. Great, that's it. Lovely. So the Net Zero Neighbourhood Programme and forward one. So it's the next slide. It's the context of the background. The Net Zero Neighbourhood Programme was approved last year by the Combined Authority. It's aiming to take a place-based approach to retrofit, but not just retrofit homes, but wider improvements to neighbourhoods, so green spaces, new transport links, potentially looking at also things like flood risk, but looking at this wider environmental issues that are very much led by retrofit. The AIM programme is to demonstrate that the approach works, that there's spending more time on community engagement and focusing on the needs of an area creates greater uptake. Also delivers wider benefits, including health and well-being, employment opportunities, inclusive growth opportunities. But then it also supports the development of a replicable finance model, and this is the really important bit of the programme, because that's the bit that will enable us to scale up retrofit. So the programme was allocated £2.1 million funding by the Combined Authority last year. Each of the 7 constituent members had a grant allocation of £15,000 to develop a plan for a net zero neighbourhood, and that left just over £1.5 million to as capital match funding for the first demonstrator programme. In July, we received 5 net zero neighbourhood plans, all very detailed cover documents from Birmingham, Dudley, Sandhurst, Skegness, Brampton. Coventry will see about developing plans, but there's 5 plans being received. So we're now in a position to be able to make the decision on the first tranche of funding. Next slide, please. And that we've decided will go to Dudley for pending statutory officer approval, which will be later in October. And the 1.65 million allocated to support phase 1 of Dudley's plan. So that will be 15 home retrofits across different tenures of housing, new cycle infrastructure, and new community guidance. But it also paves the way for the second phase of the project from early 2025 onwards. So an additional 250 home retrofits, additional green infrastructure, and also retrofit non-residential. We chose this area. All of the applications were very high quality. All of the areas are viable as net zero neighbourhoods. But Dudley's one of the best fit with all the programme goals and high confidence in delivering. If we could have funded all 5, we would have done. So that's the next stage, I think, really for us, is to work not only with Dudley but with all of the 7 local authorities to continue to develop the plans, to identify opportunities for funding, and to continue to develop the finance pool so that we can bring forward not just one net zero neighbourhood, but a whole cohort, and ideally 7, but more than that in the future as we develop the finance pool. So, Jackie, sorry, do you mind skipping back 2 slides to the purpose? So the asks in the paper, I should have put it last.
Sorry, George, I'm really struggling to hear you. Which slide? Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Just go to the purpose, please, which is two slides back.
It's all frozen.
Okay.
Well, hang on.
It's to,
there you go.
What we're asking the board to do is to endorse the decision to allocate the funding to Dudley. Also endorse the intention to create a net zero neighbourhoods working group, working with all 7 constituent members to continue to develop the plans and secure funding. And also provide feedback on how you'd like to be engaged or how you'd like to be kept up to date on specific areas of the programme outside of the. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of observations from me. The timescale for this I'm interested in, because my understanding of this programme is that you know, it's a sort of exemplar, it's showing how to do stuff, you know, at scale. We talked about essential outputs there. And I'm also, and yet the time scale is 22-25. And yet earlier on in that, we're talking about we need to retrofit nearly 300,000 homes in the region by 2026 to meet targets. Now, there seems to me an inconsistency between what's going on here. I mean, you know, it seems to me that this program, no problem with the proposal here particularly, but I'm just wondering how this is going to help the 300,000 that's got to be done by 2026. and there's an emphasis, it seems, on financial models. And what we know is that we need to encourage the market, and you know, retrofit, all houses are different for a start, and yet it's retrofit is the real challenge that we face rather than some of the other things. So I'd just like some comments on that.
Okay, well, on the scale, I think I would perhaps point colleagues in the environment to comment on the target of being 3,000 megs by 2026. As you say, it absolutely is about creating a market. But that requires development of the supply chain. It requires development of finance models. It requires people to be engaged, and all of those things take time. But from the starting point where there is no market, there's no real supply chain to do the work that's needed. There's no demand to speak of. There's lots of latent demand. There's lots of interest. People who want to do this in their homes, but the offers for people aren't out there. So that's what the program is aiming to do. So it's aiming to unpick a lot of the very thorny issues that we need to be able to retrofit people to scale. But I think you're absolutely right. There is a mismatch between what we need to do, what we have to do, what we're able to do. So partly that comes to partly is because there are lots of complex issues that need to be fixed. As you will see, every home being slightly different, every house is different.
And actually, people don't want you trampled in their homes. For the sake of it's easier to just put fire on it. I mean, I understand this. The financial model is really important. I mean, I think there is demand out there. I mean, everybody wants a warmer home. The probability is they can't afford it, and a second probability is that it's not easy to do in their particular house because they all get modified and the rest of it, and it's not easy to understand what the difference will be. So, I mean, this is meant to be a demonstrator project. I'm not because on the project itself. I'm looking at the outputs. Indeed, that's one of the questions. Number 3, you're saying, how do you want feedback? Well, I can't wait for 2026 or 2025 because we'll have missed the boat. So what we're going to need to do is to decide on an information chain of what works and what ideas come through. And I think that's got to come from the team. I don't see that I can say, how do you want information? Well, we want early things to know early what works. And the various aspects of this, you've picked a particular location. And I mean, there are a number of councils pitched, including Solihull. And I looked at it, I've no problem with the decision at all. And I hope no one else is. I can't guide you, but I would have thought, it's one to be done. And plus the fact we want to do more. But it's what are the characteristics, for instance, of that neighbourhood that make it different from others? Because I have a feeling you pick the most suitable, but there's 300,000 need doing. It just the methodology in learning that, applying it to everyone else, is very difficult.
There's some things that will be applicable to other areas. There's some things that, as you say, will be different. But I think that's the reason why we're actively looking for funding for those other areas. For example, through our devolution discussions with government, we will look for means of funding as well. The social housing decarbonisation fund, there will be other opportunities through upgrade plan scheme. So I think it's really important that we get as many demonstrators as possible because there is a hell of a lot of learning we need to do.
But one of the demonstrators, and I agree with all this, but I'm deliberately being pro because there's an area I'm sort of half familiar with, and I want to see the legacy that we can have of making a change here. But for example, sometimes there's a habit of saying, well, we need a 100% energy efficient. I'm not sure that you do. The whole point about what we must do with climate change is an issue of scale. We need to applicability of scale and what comes out of the program that will show we can use at scale. But the second thing is, well, you can call it value for money, but if we spend £1 in this way, it will generate, let's say, 10 outputs. But if we spend £1 in this way, it'll only generate 1 or a half. And we need to focus, money's going to be limited. How are we going to make sure we focus the money on what achieves the best outcome?
I think the best outcome is partly determined by what people want, as you say. People want lots of people trumpeting through their aims. So I think the outputs of the community engagement, which is the first phase of the project, will give us a hell of a lot of learning, because they will reveal what people are prepared to have done for their aims, what is possible to do for those aims, and I think there will be a lot of lessons to be learned from that. You said that not every home needs to be 100% energy efficient, and I agree about doing what has the maximum impact. And so it's the combination of the assessment of the home, technical assessment, but also the engagement with the household that will allow you to see what's possible, what's achievable, what gets us further as fastest. So I'm hoping that by engaging with probably quite a wide variety of homes within a relatively small area in the short space of time, that will give us a lot of learning, which will be relevant to other programs.
Okay, two more questions. Or one is actually a challenge. So what I'm waiting to get, I want to see from this is the ammunition which I can be given to say, look, we've discovered this, we've found this, therefore government give us more money or give it to us rather than Manchester. You know, healthy competition. But you know, I'm getting it. You know, that's what our objective has to be, is why we have success and why we should have more money, because that is really important. But the second question is, what is the relationship of this project with the 3 cities retrofit, which I mean, we've got certain residents Birmingham, but you know, question mark, what is the relationship? Because it seemed to be the two things are mentioned quite regularly.
Well, for this particular project, you know, we've had applications for net zero enabling plans submitted from Birmingham and Wolverhampton. We're waiting for commentary. Really, the 3 cities programme is setting out a large ambition for those particular areas, which we endorse and support. We've got to find out ways of working together to solve the problems, but the working group net zero enabling is one aspect of that. I think we would like ideally to set up another working group to help solve some of those problems together and to share evidence. You know, as you've alluded to, there are lots of complex problems. We're best off when we work together to solve those. We have limited resources as individual organisations, but if we can pull those resources and work together, and we can solve problems, share learning, and get a lot further faster. Yeah, I agree with that, because I think I don't know much about 3 cities, and we're not a city. Anyway, we're not involved. But I think there is funding for some form of pilot involved in that. And I just, you know, what we cannot, you know, as representing the West Midlands, you know, we cannot have a situation where we're not joined up, because oh my goodness, that would look bad. Absolutely, but I think if I can reassure you, had a very good conversation with the council, going to the council, which is exciting about how we can share that better.
Excellent. Andy?
Well, yeah, first of all, support the recommendation. We'd like to be kept informed on a regular basis through the officers, so we can keep up on that. That's good. I think you make a good point, but I think the first point is, I'm getting, as cabinet member for housing and climate change, there are so many schemes I'm having trouble keeping up with them. You know, I've just approved Eco 4 and Eco Flex last night, you know, which is a large fund of £2 billion, which we can draw down to some money, do some insulation. So there is that. The fundamental problem with this is the bureaucracy in getting the stuff through. 2 is that the bureaucracy is gold-plated assurance, but we haven't got the assessors in the country to do that. So that's rate limits it. The second is the market for insulation is limited. And the third thing is we were trying to set up is a company trying to get this going, so we can get the apprentices, get the infrastructure supply, but we don't have the funding for the 5-year horizon. So no one's going to commit. No one's going to commit to employing an apprentice on the hope of the Treasury saying in April saying, oh, we'll have a grant, apply for July, then you've got to deliver it within a year, and you start all over again. It's not a business model. So we need to really grapple the fundamentals, i.e., labour, material, get the supply chain into the, make sure in the West Midlands, centre of manufacturing, we get into the equipment, the hardware that requires to retrofit in our borough, so we don't have to wait for supply chain to deliver it. And we need a long-term 5-year plan. I hate using the word 5-year plan, but
I mean, I chatted the 5-year plan when we launched the very helpful report from University of Birmingham on retro fitting the residential market, which is what probably would. But that was exactly the point. But the response from Bayes, I think it was, they work on a yearly model, and frankly, this is the money that's available, and so on. It is something we keep going on about. I do, all the time. Is that if I'm going to invest in trainees, in people to learn to do things that you need to retrofit, I need a consistency of supply chain and business ahead of it. Because we're not going to do this. It's actually the market out there. Right, I need to move on more rapidly. But
I think you made a good point in relation to the 3 city project at the end of the day. This particular report indicates the winners and losers, and Dudley is the winner and the rest are all losers. And with the 3 city approach, they will be punching their weight to try and get more money, and the losers will be the ones that are left in their way in the combined authority, and there needs to be some more joined up working with.
Well, we are. That's what we need.
Okay, I'm from Dudley, so you can say he's going to have a voice anyway. But I came here viewing this as total togetherness, right? Something that we was all going to move forward, I think it's going to benefit everybody. If you'd have gone back into the 60s and looked at the space rate with NASA, who would have thought like a few decades further down the road, you could have private enterprise with Elon Musk and Virgin going into space built on the technology that they grounded in NASA. This here then is exactly the same sort of thing. If we don't start doing it somewhere, it's never going to get done. We'll all benefit. And the benefits that's going to come from this is through the research and development and having that vision. And it is a research and development phase that's going to benefit everything else. Now, you may say that Dudley's going to benefit the most. I can turn around and say, well, Dudley's going to be where the mistakes are going to be made and will benefit because we won't make those mistakes that they do in the research and development phase of this. So therefore, there will be an economic and a skills and a supply chain benefit from some way of doing it. I'm not going to keep on about Dudley, but somewhere has to do it, so the decision has to be made. Again, I agree with the chair. I was a bit confused taking it forward from 2006. Well, okay, the time scale needs to be adjusted. And again, the way that we communicate the project through the group is also vastly important. Right? The communication is a learning stage for everybody. Yeah, and I think we can either sit down and have meetings like this, procrastinate about this or that or the other, or then we can have leads by people right going to Brockmore, seeing how it's happening, making podcasts. Let's be a bit more futuristic in how we report benefits, and successes and failures. Like you learn from failures. Failures aren't a bad thing. Like they say, cost a hell of a lot of money. Failure is a teaching mechanism that enables you to not make failures in the future. So I think the way that you report the scheme also needs to be modernised, right, and accessible. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic scheme for everybody in the West Midlands, and I wouldn't even view it as a Dudley standpoint. I suppose you can get political if you want to, but I'm like. Grew up in Dudley, well, Hellzoe, then we got put into Dudley at the time. And then I worked all my life in the centre of Birmingham, right? So I know what Birmingham's all about. I know what Dudley in the Black Country is all about. And this will just like filter through. Yeah, it's a vision, it's a future vision. Yes, some things need ironing out, but I would view it as a golden opportunity, exactly the same as the space race. Because the other thing we can do is, if you want to do nothing, what's going to happen? We did some retrofitting on some old people's houses, yeah,
And this was going on about last November, and I was putting the leaflets through. And this old lady came out, look what you're doing to my house, you know, I can't this and I can't that, the other sort of thing. To make it, I like to be settled in what I'm doing. So I totally agree. And it does say in the report that we have to get the volunteers on board, so it's working with the community, right? And you will have visionary members of the community, right? They're not all like that. However, I went back 2 months after they finished the retrofit, knocked on the door and spoke to the same lady. She didn't even remember kicking off that she was having a hard time. No.
And this is the
Right?
trouble with.
But she was saying it's lovely. Oh, look at the problems everybody's going to have, but I'm all right. You know, I've got all
I think
this
that's right.
experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all talking the same thing actually, and we joined up. And you know, I'm very pleased with Maisie selection. I looked through all this, and tomorrow we've got to do something. This is a good place. It's the feedback. You're desperate to.
Well, just a quick point. I just wanted to come in and say that contextually, I think the sums of money involved in this are massive. It's just need to remember that. So you look at £30,000, you put that in for the West Midlands. The figure required to sort this is something well into the billions, talking 4 or 5 billion. It's unbelievably complex, as you said, in terms of all the schemes that are out there, and they're all getting smaller. So I'm actually on the Coventry Climate Change document, so some idea of what's going on there. We had a presentation from here on talking about it. And the sum of money has been hard for electric. So it's complex, there's not enough money, the amount of money is massive. In that context, I think what the Combined Authority is doing with £2 million money is commendable. It's a really good scheme. It's done really well. You could easily waste that money trying to pull things together or getting embedded in all these other schemes. Actually, what you're doing is great, and it's involving your authorities. So fantastic. I had a quick question, which was around the finance law, because the finance law is key in the context of doing this. There's no way it's got to be simplified. It's really just a kind of reservation from past experience. But, what reassurance can you give us that finance law is going to be open and will involve, because it will involve private sector partners supporting this? How are you, do you have any sense already of what the finance law is going to be? And can you reassure it's not going to be really?
As you say, we're not going to get public finance. Lots of private sector finance will be needed. That means lots of private sector partners. So there will be variations on lots of the model that seems to have some mileage, and we're working with bankers without boundaries at the moment. That is model they're calling it to enable service. They did call it a universal service, but after talking to us, we changed it. And that's sort of based on pulling together all of the different beneficiaries of the work, so not just the individuals in their homes, but the sort of wider civic or private and public sector beneficiaries. So it could be water companies, it could be infrastructure providers, it could be health service, and trying to base the funding model of that, not just the energy savings. I think we know that models just based on energy savings are not likely to work, so we have to look at some of the benefits. So that is very much kind of work in progress. The first meeting that we'll have with this next zero negative working group will probably focus on the financial funding opportunities. In terms of being open, yes, I mean we'll be developing it, so we'll share as much as we possibly can do. But what I will say is also we have the Energy Capital Partnership relaunch. Lots of financial problems there, and there's lots of interest in this project and in this model. So we know that if we can demonstrate the project to work, there's a lot of finance people queued up to want to fund this sort of stuff. I think one of the challenges for us is how can we twist our arms a little bit, put a little bit more into the demonstrator phase collectively, so that we can go a bit further.
Quick calculation, I reckon it's 12 billion.
It's actually 23 billion across the.
I've got a 2 somewhere.
So
I'm working 40 times.
The 1.2 so the 1.2 million pounds about 23 billion. But so it's the 300,000, yes, more like 6 billion. But quite right, it could really be double that once you take
It's based on 36,000 or 40,000.
Yeah,
it's a lot. And we're not going to get it. Okay.
Ian, could I be allowed to say something, please,
Well,
at some stage in this meeting? I think whether it's extremely important that you cut all the expenditure on Grimsby Briar Hill Extension Phase 2. You could save hundreds of millions of pounds, and you could actually put that money into retrofitting. You could put that money into
Tim,
not building.
You've made your message loud and clear in emails that we all get regularly. Now, we have a limited time here, and actually, I think there's a speaker on the left. Now, if we have some time at the end, but I'm usually very fluid with people, but it's not that this is a new message, and I have to be respectful of the people online and everyone else's times here. Okay, so we'll see how we get on. I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with my colleague from being first on part of the major scheme isn't always the best because of research and development and also finance. Because normally, from what I've seen from projects, the people who are second, third, fourth tend to get the lessons learned from the initial project, so it's quicker and less expensive as well. And I like to thank the officers actually because they're having a meeting with the officers from Birmingham to debrief us as to why we had an unsuccessful bid. But I am also grateful for the fact that take heed as all of us should round table because you mentioned all of the bids were very high quality, and that you are looking to find a specific budget because the Carswell team in Birmingham doesn't have a budget. The budget is part of the application. It would be good to support that in the future, and I think Chair is also aware of the wide ambitions we have for East Birmingham and Solihull. And part of that is also having Carswell as a deal-enabled neighbourhood. And just on the 360 programme, there's 165,000 properties for social homes that will be retrofitted in Birmingham, Wolverhampton and Coventry. And I think it's really important that the Chair said there does need to be a working relationship between yourselves and the 360 programme because there's lots of synergies and the scale as well. See that, and I'm quite fortunate to be in a position where the majority of the properties that are being retrofitted in Birmingham are actually within my ward anyway. So beautiful index knowledge. Even if you want to speak my praise, and more than happy to receive. Thank you.
Thanks. That's really important. I mean, you've made reference to East Birmingham, North Solihull, but I mean that corridor between Birmingham and the airport, in fact, is something that Birmingham and Solihull Council are collaborating on very strongly. We think we have some great ideas there. It's based on partly on transport, but there are a number of spin-offs where the two areas are similar. We have been in the North Solihull. We've been asking questions about our own plan for retrofit. So I can see that the synergies here are enormous. I mean, getting the money is, as always, challenging. But okay, did I miss anyone? Okay, thank you. Well, I hope that's helpful, and I hope that is all productive. I mean, I don't remember what the questions were. There were three of them. One of them to support. I don't think it's a decision-making body actually. So we, in terms of as a committee, but I think everyone supports it, Dudley, and wishes him well. And we're all looking forward to our meeting over there when in the future when you can show us what you've done. So well done. And he's a bit sore that we didn't get there, but these things happen. These things happen. It's for the good of the region. So. Thank you. We will now move on, just past 11, to Industrial Energy Task Force. Matthew.
I've actually got this is a verbal update because this is a very fast-moving area, as you're probably all aware, energy prices and energy costs. And in fact, the Industrial Energy Task Force was set up on August the 3rd, so since the last meeting. And we go on to the next slide. Yeah, so it was in fact set up in Dudley, or launched in Dudley by the then Energy Minister, Greg Hands, and the Mayor of Sports as well, and local MP Mike Wood. And it's focused totally on the impact of the recent rise in energy costs on industry, business industry, manufacturing energy exposed business in particular. The reason for that, just to kind of remind you all of the context, which you probably have to definitely anyway. Energy costs globally have risen massively in the last 12 months, particularly. From a kind of consumer perspective, a headline perspective, that's come 3 to 4 times, and the government put in place a price cap for domestic customers a while ago, which limited that rise to about double. In practice, commodity gas prices went up by about 12 in September. They're very, very volatile, and the original government measures only covered households. They did not cover business. So businesses were facing, well, businesses are in a completely different context because a lot of them have longer term contracts and fixed contracts. So about 80% of businesses tend to have some form of fixed tariff. Just like households, they come off those at some point. In the household sector, it's the other way around. 80% of people on there so households felt this too. At the point this task force was set up, it wasn't clear what the government was doing about business energy costs, so they were completely exposed to this, and they were all coming off these fixed tariffs. We can all see this cliff approaching between now and next year. The task force came obviously very kindly focused on that issue. It is worth just being clear. So what I'm here to business. So this is energy environment, but we mostly talk about the environment. In fact, that country in particular, that country manufacturers have been lobbying government for some time. What time period that was, certainly 3 years, around energy and the impact of energy, UK energy policy on their businesses. And we have an industrial decarbonisation program in that country, which the left helps to come for years. And we've been looking for this to do something. So these things all came together, and this task is coming out of that activity as well. And it's, the focus is, what can we do in this region? It's the West Midlands task force. The mayor sponsored it. What can we do to deliver better support to businesses in this context? What, both in the short term and in the medium term, and how can we lobby government to do what they can as well? I'll almost say at this point again, but we're focused on what we can do as a region in this space, not what the country should be doing or what we should be doing internationally. It's what can we do specifically. That's not necessarily the same thing. We can't do anything about prices. We might be able to do stuff about support. So it's time limited. Focus on energy exposed business. I'll come back to that in a second. And we're going to be bi-monthly through to next June, and we're going to find report. If we go on to the next slide, actually, at this point, it's business led. This task force. So the kind of structure is we're all independent of local authorities, combined authority, because it's private sector people by and large. The one exception, Cheryl, is the East County director, and we are so the problem. We're owners of the problem, really, saying to regional and national government what we can actually do to help us make their recommendations. And just to kind of point out, among that membership, representatives of Food Make UK, which is the Engineering Employers Federation, of a wide diversity of West Midlands industry, chamber of commerce, large companies, Jaguar Land Rover in the automotive sector, medium and smaller companies, linking steel processing, foundries, Lloyds Bank on the finance side, and Mondelez International Academy. And we're going to expand slightly for the next meeting in the Chemicals Industry Association as well, and Food and Drink. If we go on to the next slide. The reason we're focused on certain sectors, and this is a little small, so you can't. But it's important to just make people who may not be so aware of energy that some sectors are far more. We can't obviously say, like I said, but some sectors are far more exposed to rising energy costs than others. So that chart is how much energy it takes per unit output of a business. And if you're making steel, which is the one at the bottom, you need a massive amount of energy. And the next one up is oil and petrochemicals again. It's massive amount of energy. The next three, though, I think are doing in the West Midlands, which are processing methods, so heating it, melting it, cashing it, making food, baking it, refrigerating it, all those kind of things, chemicals. And the point this chart makes is the ones at the top are financial and professional services, people who operate in offices, right? So if you're an office-based organisation, like a homeowner, the rise in energy prices is really painful, right? It's just gone up from what would probably have been about 1% of your total costs to 3%. That's painful because there's quite a lot of money in absolute terms. But for the guys at the bottom of that chart, when energy costs double, 30–40% of your cost base suddenly becomes 80% of your cost base. And when your profit was only 10%, so if I got some numbers around, you've just gone from being a profitable business to a business that's losing 30% of your turnover every year. You're going to die. Right? This is the end of those businesses. And so this problem is basically more than 100 times worse for a family than it is for a bank. That's just so you're aware when we talk about it, that's why we're focusing on this. The other thing in that chart is the green ones get a lot of support from government because they're big pipe focused targets. This is INEOS, and they already have a lot of support for the last 10 years, and they're getting a lot of support around decarbonisation as well. So there's about £20 million. The pink and orange ones doesn't matter so much. I'd say because the numbers are smaller, they're less export exposed as well. This is a competition between us, America, Germany, China. Yes, they subsidise those costs and we don't. They can supply goods more cheaply. So there's a real. We have many more numbers. The West Midlands has more of the blue type companies than any other region. We have more medium-sized firms than the other regions, so their firms are quite big and just the employees in these kind of areas. The point there is if one of those guys, they're employing 100 people, it takes decades to get the business from 0 to 100 people. If 100 businesses employ one person or 2 people die, they'll be up and running again by next Monday, doing something different. It's quite easy. We could destroy accidentally in the next 6 months or a year the heart of the UK economy and certainly the heart of it. So that's the challenge. It's really quite serious. 300,000 jobs, £22 billion for this year. Okay, so this is why we're doing this. Next picture just reinforces this really. So a map showing the relative density of these kind of businesses. I've already said this verbally. Yeah. So that's we've plotted across the UK where the energy exposed businesses are. It's quite slow because that's why we're here actually. That's why the city's here the last 200 years. So we're looking at interventions to support these, and we've got less than a year to do it. In fact, we're going to try and do it faster than that. One final slide on kind of situation where we're at to start with. Again, sorry, this is too small context. The region has about £8 million a year at the moment, maybe slightly higher, which is spent on energy efficiency type support for small and medium-sized enterprises. It has been provided through European development funds for lots of years. All of those schemes come to an end in the next by June 2020. That money is disappearing. There is no replacement. So there's not enough. There's some support out there. There are people doing. It's a bit. It's not as bad as housing. It's much simpler. It's still very complicated, right? That's a dozen schemes, and we had a meeting yesterday. That's half of them. There's another dozen. That's for kind of £8 million a year. So you can go out and you can get free energy audits, you can get grants for a bit of equipment, LED lighting, that kind of stuff if you're on board as a business. But it's not really hitting the spot yet. Again, it's a little bit like a variation. So what more can we do is the question part of this is trying to address. And we've got. I should say, apart from being on the task force, we've got resourcing from APK, which is one of the people's Lloyd Banks, one of the people who come on the focus group. So that's all very helpful. Go on to the next slide. We're going to do 4 things straight away as a task force. We have produced on our first meeting in September a 5-point plan for government, very much. So saying as a region and as that demographic, what we feel government should be doing immediately to support us. And just bear in mind, this was published before the government announced last week they're doing a price cap for business, and the details of it. That only lasts 6 months anyway, so we're pointing beyond that. The 5 points are: we want the number one by a long way ask from business from government is funding for energy efficiency input into manufacturing operations, specialist advice, basically, energy efficiency support programs. Because when you reduce your energy consumption by 20% by investing in a new machine, you save that energy forever. You've also saved the carbon forever. It's just a win-win-win. The problem is you might have changed your. That's interfering with your fundamental business process, if you like, how you make the takes, how you make the camshafts for the cars, and therefore you need specialist support in doing that, and there's not the capacity in those. So that's our number one ask. Then 2 or 3 around energy price reform, so dealing with gas and electricity. So we have the ability to buy cheap electricity where it's generated from renewable energy, for example, which at the moment we can't do for technical reasons. Yeah, more on-site generation, all good stuff, all that also supports the decarbonisation agenda. I think that would probably do as a kind of overview of where we're at. So the other 3 things we're doing, there'll be an interim report in November, which will go into a bit more of things I've been talking about really, and what government can do in a bit more detail. And there'll be a final report next June, which makes some solid recommendations in there, which goes into the political process. And we're not waiting for reports and things. We're also pulling together all of this support in the region and asking if they would, as an emergency, work together to deliver support to businesses. We had a meeting with them yesterday, and we're going to do that. It'll be up and running next week. There'll be 3 energy audits offered by what manufacturing group, Aston, others, and we'll be seeing how much money we have to offer. You guys have to do.
I mean, I was certainly impressed with the meeting I attended, but it was a large round, long table. I don't know, 20, 30 people were there, including a government minister. But I mean, what impressed me was, I mean, when times is difficult, and unfortunately, it's not going to be possible for government to help everybody who needs help. It just is not going to be possible. I mean, the needs keep going on. But it's what I would say the potential for structural damage in some industries. That's what frightens me. I mean, you know, some industries are easy in, easy out. You know, you lose them, they can bounce, they can come back and set up again. Some of the industries we're talking about, that is not the case. You know, I mean, we've lost so much industry in this country. You know, unlike, you know, I think Germany, for example, have held on to some specific industry. So to my mind, the key thing is what are the interventions that are possible, and how do we protect that structural base? Some of which are really important, like military things like that.
And that plays totally into the regional agenda. I think you mentioned it earlier about the local authorities know that you know your area and you're able to target, because it's all about targeting.
Yeah, it is targeting, which is what you said in your recommendation number 1. Andy?
Yeah, in my day job, I'm a consulting chemical engineer. So first thing I'll say is the foundry is a basis of industry. Without a foundry, you can't make the parts and it goes to the chain. So you remove your foundry, you have a knock-on effect on the supply chain. It means more imports. So the priority needs to be the manufacturing sector in this way. You can't help insulate people's homes. You can't do anything for people unless you have an industrial base. That's a fundamental thing. That's a priority. Yeah. What I find interesting, I mean, you're right, that the energy market's linked to the price of gas. price of gas is going to shoot up today because of the Russian bombings. So you're gonna, so no matter what you do, your price of EV electricity is fixed by the price of gas. That's wrong. That needs to be restructured. But the real problem in biomethane, if you generate biomethane, you can put into the gas grid and you can take it out of the gas grid as biomethane. We don't have the same facility electricity market where we generate electricity. We could have we have to then give it to the gas grid company for free, or even pay them to take it, and we can't get the benefits of that. So that's one point. The other second point is one of my clients, William Refrigerator, I don't mind mentioning it. They installed solar panels on the whole of their roof for free because someone did it for them, as part of the grant. And now they don't pay any electricity during the day. Yeah, on the Commonwealth Games, there's a company saying, well, we would love to install electric panels on our roof, but the roof is not strong enough. So we need to help people to do that. There's also the thing about logistical issues of who owns the roof, we should break through that. But also, if someone generates power, like schools, why can't we put that power into the grid and take it out of the grid? And that's the fundamental problem we need to address.
That is, I totally agree, and that is the second point in the 5 point plan. It's about, because that is a energy market regulatory issue. So what we're talking about fundamentally is the ability to allocate cheap, green, predictable power or energy to the people who need. That's what we're talking about.
That's what I've done.
Okay, but very good. All right. Right, I'm going to move on then to 11. I'm not sure who's going to do this. It's on the screen. It's a screen-based job, is it? On Trailblazer, Devolution deal, net zero, and environment. And this was sent through last night, I think.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Brill. Thanks, Jackie. Yes, so my name is Sarah Russell. Lovely to meet you all, for those of you who I haven't met before. I am part of the strategy team at the Combined Authority, and I'm currently supporting Ed Cox on the programme management of the Trailblazer Devolution deal. And I'm here to give you a bit of an update around process. So primarily, firstly, around the principles of this devolution deal, a little bit on how it differs from previous deals, where we're up to in the process, and finally, a summary of the policy areas that the proposals cover. Next slide, please, Jackie. Thank you. So I think you've all had these circulated ahead of the meeting, so I won't go through each one word for word, but in summary, the principles governing the development of this devolution deal build on, but go a little bit further than those that were seen in the 2015 devolution deal. So namely, to go through the right-hand side quickly, firstly, that these proposals within the Trailblazer devolution deal align with local and regional plans, that there is extensive involvement of local authorities and wider stakeholders, including private and voluntary sectors, that we secure as much private sector support for as many of our devolution proposals as possible, that we aim to address intra-regional inequalities, especially local pockets of deprivation, through this devolution process, as well as making provision for double devolution of certain powers and resources where this makes most sense. Then there's a principle around the fact that this devolution deal should be focused on drawing powers down from central government to either the regional or local level, and not about sucking powers up from local authorities to the CA at all. And finally, that there will be a strong emphasis on data and accountability and the ability to demonstrate progress against the Levelling Up missions, which come from the Levelling Up white paper published in February of this year. Next slide, please, Jackie. Thanks. It's a little bit different in some other ways as well from previous devolution deals. So where the previous deals were made between the region and the Treasury, this deal is being coordinated by DLUC, who have a little bit less authority across government, although we have seen some positive noises in terms of Simon Clarke's closeness to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor over the last week or so. So we need to see what happens there over coming weeks. The previous deals were with a much newer combined authority that was yet to prove itself. Now we're a much more mature and regional partnership with many partners and stakeholders. And we've been trusted with trailblazer status in the Levelling Up White Paper to lead the way in terms of devolution in England. The first deal was a much simpler arrangement in terms of there being gain share in return for a mayor, combined authority and precept, or ability to set a precept. But this deal comes in the context of, well, a new government and also a very tight fiscal outlook, as well as perhaps a perception within government that the initial agreement wasn't necessarily wholly honoured by the CA in relation to the precept. And finally, there was a lot of focus on capital infrastructure previously, but we know that that isn't sufficient for inclusive growth. And we're keen to make sure that our interpretation of levelling up for the West Midlands recognises that a wider range of interventions are necessary for more inclusive growth. And we're striving to include as wide a range of policy areas as possible to make sure that we can deliver that as part of this devolution deal. Next slide, please, Jackie. Thank you. So I believe that your last update was during the middle of the summer in terms of the devolution deal process. But just as a quick recap, so the process began in March and we developed across, I think, around 20 different policy areas, work streams, devolution proposals, together with local input and engagement with all local authorities and other partners. This came together in the early summer as a collection of policy position papers, as well as fiscal devolution proposals, and also a levelling up evidence base to help us make the case for our proposals, which were then discussed and considered at a wide range of thematic boards such as this one, and groups of local authority officers, as well as a couple of groups that were established specifically as part of the process of this devolution deal. So those are listed at the bottom. So senior local authority officers group, which are sort of directors of strategies for each of the 7 Met local authorities, as well as 1 non-com representative, finance directors of local authorities, and then the devolution strategy group, which is the chief execs, before summaries of proposals were submitted to the mayor and leaders. Then where we're up to at the moment, so now September 22, we've got a document called Getting Devo Ready, and this summarises all of our asks across all of the different work streams. In parallel, we've got the work that's underway around the medium-term financial plan for the CA and how this relates to our proposals around fiscal devolution. We've also developed a more public-facing, high-level levelling up prospectus as a document that can be put in front of key stakeholders, including central government and ministers, to help make the case for our proposals over coming weeks and months. And these all also relate to a separate local benefit slide set. And this aims to pull out the specific benefits of our various proposals and how these might play out in each of our constituent local authorities, as well as pulling out the benefits that non-coms might benefit from. And where we think we're going in the next couple of months is towards the special meeting of the CA board on the 28th of October, where we hope to bring draft Trailblazer devolution deal text that becomes our mandate for negotiation going forwards. We have heard noises about a November the 23rd fiscal announcement. We're yet to see whether the Trailblazer devolution deal might be aligned with that, but we want to be ready in case it may come through that quickly. And then I think there's one more slide, Jackie. Thanks. So this slide lists all of the different policy areas that our devolution proposals cover. That in going further and faster, this is the kind of core bucket of policy areas that you might expect to see in a devolution deal, because they've been in previous devolution deals and we're often building on previous devolution. Rebooting the economy. This is where most of the proposals that this board might have discussed previously sit. So these are, this is our kind of collection of proposals that make the case for how the West Midlands can be at the heart of the green industrial revolution and also protect our exposed businesses. Then we also have increasing pride in place, which is a big emphasis of the Levelling Up white paper, and we think making sure that we make progress to address the inequalities in these areas across our region is going to be really key to achieving inclusive growth in practice over the next few years. And then there are, at the bottom in the blue box, a couple of supporting and enabling areas, and this is where items such as the data performance and accountability measures that I mentioned previously in the principles sit, as well as funding simplification and fiscal devolution as well. This will all be supported by the West Midlands Outcomes Framework, which is in draft and is our proposal for how we will be held accountable to government depending on which proposals we're able to successfully negotiate. And these have a clear read across, not just to the Combined Authority's Inclusive Growth Framework, but also to the government's Levelling Up missions. I think those are the ends of my slides. Thanks, Jackie. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. It's probably worth colleagues from Energy Capital and then from the environment team just quickly whizzing through the relevant devolution asks. So George, Kate, can I hand over to you for the energy ones?
Yeah. I'll go first. Yeah. First, so I think we heard before some of the comments on the net zero neighbourhoods paper were around there's a lot of funding streams out there. It's very complex. So I think one of the main asks is to simplify the funding that's there and to commit to long-term funding approaches. So the long-term funding pot, that's actually 125 million. That's a fair share for the West Midlands of what's already been allocated within the direction. But we have to spend a lot of time at the moment bidding for funding. Schemes are only for a year. So all the problems that were articulated before are true. That's why we're asking for simplification funding to allow us to meet the needs of our areas better. So that's the main ask. But alongside that, we talked about lots of complexity in the retrofit market. There are a lot of technical issues that need to be solved. So we're asking for innovation funding alongside that. And then finally, we need to better coordinate that with the skills funding that we already have, so that we can build the supply chain. If you have predictable demand, then you can start to build the supply chain. There's more incentive for people to do apprenticeships, training, all the rest of it. So that really is the central aspect about funding simplification in the longer term.
So in terms of local area energy planning, the ask is essentially the mandate to develop local area energy plans for the whole of the Midlands. We know that the underlying energy system radically changed in order to decarbonise, but also to make sure that that is an inclusive transition potentially. And in order to do that, we need the evidence to be able to make informed decisions, and we also need to be able to have the evidence to influence shape what that system looks like. And at the moment, we really don't. We have at best an ad hoc picture. We've done some great work in Fulham, particularly on the Regional Energy System Operator project, which demonstrated the value and the power of having that evidence base. And we think we can go further with that, in that we need to reduce actually the outputs of that need to be far more accessible in order to make them work with all the stakeholders, not just energy, but also the transport system and the spatial planning system. So that is the ask to government, essentially to say we need to do that, we need to do it better, we need to do it comprehensively, and as the outcome of that, we also need to be able to designate zones where we know that there are certain least progressed least regret infrastructure investments that need to be made. And we need to de-risk that investment in the private sector by allowing those zones to be designated and to for certain technologies to come to the fore. So that's essentially part of the local area. Hand over to Matthew at that point to
we have one for industrial decarbonisation as well, which doesn't come under net zero, but we're basically asking for, so this was independent task force, 30 million energy efficiency support program, which is the same in a broken record, and 4 million to support restructuring of industry to make it more easier to make it zero carbon. So that's probably quite an important point. Particularly in this region, a lot of industry built around coal, or the geography is based on fossil fuels. If you want that same industry, the same jobs to work in a net zero world, they're in the wrong place. So we want some funding to enable us to reconfigure industrial estates and build new industrial parks and actually move businesses around the region so that they're in a more resilient context. But moving forward, that ties in with circular economy, which is doing as well. But that's really, I mentioned that because it illustrates the scale of this challenge. This is not just automating what exists or adding green energy to what exists. We're going to have to change what we actually do. And we're
I'm just going to pick up the first two of the asks from the environment team. So these are all around climate adaptation, which is an emerging area of the environment team's program at the moment. So the background to it is we know we've already got 1 degree Celsius locked in climate change, and from global policies we're heading for about 3 degrees. So it's going to be an increasing need to look at climate adaptation so that we're resilient across people, society, economy, and our environment. And we know that there aren't really many combined authorities or local authorities in the country that are really pushing this in the same way that net zero agenda has emerged as a priority. So we've been asking and working with DEFRA. We had a good meeting with them, a lot of support for this idea that we have the West Midlands Combined Authority become a pathfinder for regional adaptation plans, and that would include both devolution to the Combined Authority of funding, but also dual devolution to local authorities to try and bring the capacity on climate adaptation, and also work together to try and understand how we formulate plans that work at both the local and regional level, but sit alongside the national adaptation programme, where there is this current gap in governance. And the second part of the adaptation aspect that we'll develop is around communities as well. So we want to trial community-led approaches to tackle climate change, potentially sitting alongside some of our community and grant work, the extension of that that Ruth talked about earlier, but then also working alongside local resilience forum and trying to understand how do we build capacity in communities in the same way that we saw during COVID-19, and building on the work that the local resilience forums already do. So there's a couple of asks there. We've asked for a total of 1.7 million that would support us over 2 years to try and do those two pieces of work. Conversations have been really supportive so far, but yeah, we'll see what comes out in the autumn financial statements. I'm going to hand over to Mike, who's on the screen, and he's going to just cover the final one on the natural environment.
All right, thanks, Rich. Yes, so the final ask relates to us leading a Pathfinder study into how we can innovate and develop a natural environment investment fund. We know that there's a shortfall nationally with funding natural capital, natural environment projects, and there's a definite push by DEFRA towards enabling private investment into delivering nature-based solutions and nature recovery projects. So what we are looking to do is develop a project that looks firstly at mechanisms of how we could set up a fund and deliver this and establish a trading platform, but importantly, looking at a pipeline of projects that can actually deliver this and actually deliver nature recovery and other nature-based services, including climate mitigation and climate adaptation across the region. So that's the ask we've finally gone for on the natural environment side.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's a good overview. I think a couple of points I would just bring in would be there was a briefing by, I think it was City Ready, at one of Andy Street's Thursday economic impact briefings, which I think I got this right. I was just trying to find it, but couldn't. The most successful proposals for devolution and levelling up all this sort of area was when it involved local decision making, local involvement. And I think that's really important. And you know, because it's obvious, really, isn't it? That's what you'd expect. But how we craft that into our current proposal. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned, but not in the presentation, is the Birmingham and North Solihull what we call zone, and that's to us is incredibly important and will be covered in the submission. As I understand it, it's a joint proposal between Birmingham, Solihull, and the mayor to look at that zone between Birmingham and the airport, which has some of the highest levels of deprivation. But it's, I mean, one of the problems we have is you ask for money, and there's, you know, everybody's asking for money, and quite honestly, you wonder what you get. What we're also looking at is better ways of doing things. And one of the things I'm quite keen on is transport in that zone, in that corridor. Transport is a key thing, but another aspect is actually, you know, how from community level we can join up services. Because I don't think, you know, necessarily health and education and local communities is joined up as best it could be, please, as well, probably far as well. But you know, it's how we can better at local level produce better outcomes in that area. Something that I think is worth looking at. Okay, anybody, any speakers on this? Questions? Stunned in silence. There's an awful lot of work going on here. It's just mind-boggling. Okay, so that. Thank you very much, team. Well done. Good explanation. More work to go on. That is it, actually, in terms of the agenda. Where Tim's gone, I wasn't going to give him 2 minutes, but he might miss this opportunity. It doesn't say AOB, but I'm happy to take AOB if anyone's got anything.
Just out of curiosity,
Who is? No, he's a campaigner against the Birmingham and Brierley Hill Metro. I think that's right. And he appears at a lot of events, hands out leaflets, and has written to all of us many times. And he has been at previous meeting. You know, my attitude is, you know, people have got some legitimate say, then, you know, with order to contribute. I think you get some great contributions sometimes, but you do have to be a bit organised, and it's not new. The point is not new. So if we've had it, then that's it. I think we're just going to have a.
Can I tell you a really quick update? Sorry. So we were successful in being accepted onto the local climate engagement programme, which is how we work with local communities on climate decision making. So we had about 15 officers, and we also had officers from Sandwell, Birmingham, and Solihull come to that training session as well. But there's now an opportunity for yourself as councillors for a 2-hour self-led session that you can go on, which is all online, which is all about how you can engage the community on climate decision making. So it was just to share that there is that training that's now available, and we can share that and how to access it for you.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a suggestion that we're going to be showing something. Those of us who aren't rushing off. Was that in some? Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming over and choosing us as your venue today, and it would be our pleasure if you've got a few minutes to have a bit of a tour of the site. I'm offering up Gareth, who's our lead on education and engagement and who's been involved in driving this project forward. thank you for putting up with all the cables and whatnot. We were supposed to have a jazzy plasma screen and all sorts of things. So we're very much in the development of this building into use now. But it's been significant capital investment, £600,000 gone into this building, and been an enormous effort for the Wildlife Trust to get this over the line. But it's really about us cementing, quite literally, our footprint here, and about us developing our engagement in this part of the city, building on 3 decades of doing great work here, but just giving us a fantastic facility to work with local community groups. And I think Gareth is happy to show you around and sort of just give you a bit more of the context. On the table are our strategies. We weren't quite sure how many were coming along, so we can always provide more printed copies, and you can find that available on our website. And there's a heck of a lot of overlap, as you might imagine, with the kinds of conversations we've been having today, mobilising communities to action, thinking about climate and the impact that nature's recovery can have on climate. And actually, it's really pleasing to see all those things tie up together. So we've got big ambitions, and we need to work in partnership, effective partnerships with all of you in order to deliver that big agenda for the region. So please do take that away, and I'd be delighted to have further conversations with any of you on the strategy stuff. I'll stop talking, and you can have a little wander around and stretch your
Gareth
legs.
on a plate.
I have, over to Gareth.
William Victor.
So thank you, that would be our pleasure. Okay, shall I stop recording?
Yeah, you can.